Guilty or innocent? The truth about Kody Brown will finally be told today. The judge's words sliced through the thick silence like a knife. His gavel came crashing down, ringing in the cavernous courtroom like thunder rumbling across a turbulent sky. The clap roused everyone up from their slumber, and all gazes shifted to one person, Kody Brown. He sat rigidly at the defendant's table, but the swagger that had driven him across national television was missing. The man who had referred to himself as the head of a family empire now seemed cornered, small and desperate. His hair, once pomaded with vanity, was slick with sweat. A single bead crawled down his temple, catching in the unforgiving light above, before falling onto the high polish of the table. For years, millions had seen him on television, seen him stand proud and tall, playing the patriarch of a huge polygamous family. He was invincible, at least in his own head. But now, under the scrutiny of the court, Kody resembled less a leader and more of a man who had built an empire on deceit and was about to see it fall. The air within the courtroom was stifling. The ceiling fans whirred slowly overhead, but the tension was so great that it seemed no air could circulate. Each scuff of a chair, each cough, each scrape of leather soles on the floor seemed amplified above what was usual. Even the jurors remained seated rigidly, their attention fixed upon Kody, as if waiting for him to shatter before their own eyes. Christine Brown sat in the front row. Her back was straight, her arms crossed so tightly over her chest that her knuckles were white. Her expression was emotionless, but her eyes were piercing, trained on Kody with icy anger. She had said too much. She had suffered too much, and now this courtroom was her battlefield. To her side, Janelle fidgeted uncomfortably. Her fingers gripped a thick folder of documents, proof that would either put Kody in the ground or reveal the cracks in the family's reality. While Christine exuded rage, Janelle appeared torn, almost hurt. Her own allegiance had been destroyed years ago, but this was different. Today, the proof she held was no longer about what happened in the past. It was about what was right. Meri sat farther down the bench, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She refused to glance at Kody. Instead, her gaze was fixed straight ahead, her lips pursed together in a thin, shaking line. Her face was white, and although she kept her head held high, her eyes gave away the tempest raging within her. Betrayal, sorrow, and a tiny glimmer of something darker, revenge. And then there was Robyn, the wife some called Kody's favorite, the one who had been his shield, his protector, his final stronghold when all the others left. She sat quietly, her hands trembling in her lap. Her head stayed down, her long hair hiding her face. Occasionally she would wipe at her eyes with a tissue. To everyone else, she appeared to be the broken wife, delicate, heartbroken. But to those who really knew her, her silence was terrifying, because silence in this courtroom was louder than words. The audience, a smattering of reporters, curious onlookers, and devoted fans of the family drama, leaned forward in their seats. Every single individual in the room knew one thing. This was not just another trial, this was a reckoning. Judge Harris cleared his throat, his deep voice resonating. This court is in session for the case of Brown versus Brown. Today we shall take testimony, examine evidence, and establish the truth behind years of allegations. This is not a trial regarding television. This is not a trial regarding celebrity status. This is regarding trust, betrayal, and the abuse of power. Kody's jaw locked. His fingers clutched the tabletop so hard his knuckles were white. He ached to speak, to plead, to remind the court of himself, the father, husband, man who had created a family. But for the first time in his life, he was wordless. The silence stretched again. Every second felt like an eternity. A drop of sweat slid down the side of his face. His chest rose and fell faster. He could feel their eyes, Christine's, Janelle's, Meri's, Robyn's, all burning holes into his skin. It was no longer about love. It was no longer about marriage. This was war. Christine's lips twisted into the tiniest of smirks, as if she already knew where today was going to go. She did not have to speak any louder. She did not have to scream. She had waited for years for this moment, and she was ready to tell it all. Janelle closed her eyes for an instant, mumbling something under her breath. A prayer? Or maybe a reminder of why she was there. When she opened them again, they were fixed on the papers in her lap, as if they were her cross and her sword both. Meri's eyes, glassy but firm, finally flicked toward Kody. It was just for a second, but in that single second, years of betrayal, pain and anger flashed between them. He flinched. That silent exchange was louder than anything that could be said aloud. And Robyn? She didn't budge. She didn't say a word. She just sat, shaking, the tissue in her hand drenched in tears. But all of them, deep down, wanted to know the same thing. Was she crying because of Kody, or crying for him? Reporters' pens scribbled frantically across notepads. Cameras took quiet snaps at the back. The world beyond this courtroom may never know the whole truth. But all of them, inside those four walls, were about to see the unmasking of a man who believed himself to be above the law. The judge's gavel came down once more, shaking everyone out of their reverie. Order, this court will not accept disruption. The truth will be heard here today. A shiver ran through the room. Kody adjusted his position, at last lifting his head. His gaze swept the room, flicking from Christine to Janelle, then Meri, and at last to Robyn. Each face had a different tale to tell, but none of those tales described him as the savior he used to play at being. For the first time, Kody understood something horrific. He was alone, literally completely alone. And in that instant, the courtroom changed. It was no longer a venue of justice. It became a battlefield, and everyone who was there was equipped with secrets, lies, and truths, deadly enough to kill him. The case was not about fame. It was not about the failed promises of love. It was not even about betrayal anymore. It was about power. And Kody Brown was about to learn what happens when power slips through your hands. Someone in that courtroom would be ruined by the end of the day, and everyone knew it could very well be him. The bailiff summoned the first witness. Silence descended upon the courtroom as Christine Brown stood up from her seat. Her heels clicking against the wooden floor was like a drumroll of war. She walked slowly, consciously never looking away from Kody once. Kody stood up from his chair, attempting to convey calm authority, but his eyes gave him away. He was nervous, bordering on cornered. As Christine approached the witness stand, she put her hand on the Bible, took her oath, and sat. Silence hung between her and Kody for a second. She didn't say a word. She didn't even blink. She simply allowed the gravity of her being to linger until the judge encouraged her to start. "Mrs. Brown," the lawyer said, "please explain to the court why you are here today." Christine took a sharp breath, then spoke in a voice that was calm but tinged with years of pain. "I am here," she started, "because the truth has been kept secret for too long. I am here because the man who sat at that table constructed his life on deception. He did not betray me only. He betrayed us all." There were gasps throughout the courtroom. Kody moved uncomfortably, his jaw clenching. Christine dug into a folder and grabbed a handful of financial reports. She handed them to the attorney, who set them on the jury stand. Numbers, bank names, and transactions glared back at the jurors, each line speaking something Kody had never intended the world to know. "These are funds Kody had secretly controlled," Christine went on. "Funds he spent on himself when the rest of us were barely able to keep our children's mouths fed. He assured us we were okay, we were provided for. But in his back rooms, secretly he was transferring money, secreting it away, spending it on us and others we never knew anything about." Kody slammed his hand on the table. "That's not true," he growled, his voice ringing out in the courtroom. The judge's gavel fell immediately. "Order, Mr. Brown. You will be quiet until it is your time." Kody slumped back in his chair, fuming. Christine's eyes never left his face. "You said unity was everything, Kody. You said trust was the key to our family. But what's this kind of trust? What's this kind of leader that sucks the very funds that are supposed to provide for his children and keep his wives safe?" The jurors hung on her words, leaning in closer, whispers circulating in the air. Christine had landed a punch, and they all knew it. When she was done, Christine exited the stand. She didn't glance back at Kody. She didn't have to. The harm was already inflicted. The bailiff brought in the next witness, Janelle Brown. As opposed to Christine, Janelle moved reluctantly. Her feet dragged, her eyes weighed down, as though every step bore the burden of 1,000 regrets. She held another folder firmly against her chest, papers inside quivering in her hand. She swore and sat down, looking down at the table before her. She did not speak for a moment. The attorney urged her on. Mrs. Brown, tell the court what you know. She cleared her throat as she started speaking. I trusted him, she whispered. For years I trusted him with everything. My money, my house, my children's future. I believed in his word. But all of that was a deception. She unfolded her folder and produced letters and receipts. These papers reveal money that was meant to go into our family's future. College funds, rainy day accounts, medical bills, but that money vanished. And when I asked where the money had gone, Kody stared me right in the face and said I was crazy, that I didn't know how finances worked. Tears overflowed in her eyes. But I did get it. I just didn't want to believe he would lie to me so freely. She faced him, finally looking at Kody. I was faithful. Kody, I was there for you when Christine walked out. I was there for you when people doubted you. And this is how you showed your appreciation? By leaving our children's futures with nothing? By leaving me with nothing? Her voice intensified, spurred by rage she had suppressed for too long. You tapped accounts intended for your own kids. Kody, you had us struggling to get by while you lived like royalty. Kody moved his head violently. That's not true. Janelle, you're distorting everything. The judge's gavel crashed again. Order, Mr. Brown. Another outburst and you'll be held in contempt. Janelle's lips quivered, but she went on. The truth is right there in the numbers. You can't hide from this anymore. Not from me, not from them, not from anyone. As she descended, she walked by Christine. For an instant the two women shared a silent nod. They had stood together once as wives. Now they stood together as witnesses against the same man. Lastly, the bailiff called the third witness, Meri Brown. The courtroom appeared to become colder as Meri stood up. She walked slowly, her back straight, her chin up, but a weight seemed to be present in her every step. She took her oath and sat down, tightly clenching her hands in front of her. Her tone was soothing, too soothing. For years I lied to myself that Kody loved me, that no matter how bad things got, he loved me, but I was mistaken. This trial isn't about money. It's about the truth about who Kody Brown truly is. She leaned slightly forward, her gaze fixed on him. You didn't just financially betray us, Kody. You emotionally betrayed us. You manipulated us. You dominated us. You made us feel worthless while you pretended to be a hero in front of the cameras. Kody's face grew bright red. He seemed as if he wanted to say something, but the glare from the judge shut him up. Meri's voice grew cold. You shattered me, Kody. You made me feel inferior. You made me feel that if I questioned you it was I who was the issue. But now everybody can see the truth. You weren't creating a family. You were creating an empire of dominance. And it's now crumbling. Gasps were heard throughout the room. Reporters frantically wrote down what she said. Even the jurors looked shaken by her speech. Meri rose slowly, her voice reducing to a whisper but laced with venom. You believed that you could silence us. But today your silence will be your destruction. She descended, her shoulders set, her eyes blazing with a mix of pain and empowerment. By the time the three women finished speaking, the courtroom was charged with electricity, crackling with tension and incredulity. The jurors were murmuring, reporters snapping away, even spectators sitting on the periphery of their seats. And in the midst of it all sat Kody Brown, his complexion pale, his fists curled, his previously confident demeanor broken. 3 voices had been heard. 3 truths had been exposed. And everyone was aware. The trial had only just started. The voice of the bailiff echoed. Next witness, Robyn Brown. For an instant, the courtroom was silent. The very name was significant. Robyn was the one Kody always favored. The one he protected. The one he stood by even when the rest abandoned her. If anyone would shield him now, it would be her. Every eye followed as Robyn stood up slowly. She had a tissue clutched in one hand, her purse in the other. She walked unsteadily, her shoulders slumped. Unlike Christine, who strode with fire, or Janelle, who lugged regret, Robyn walked as if she dragged behind her chains of grief. Kody sat upright, relief flicking across his face for a moment. He nearly smiled, believing that she was going to rescue him. Yet beneath, a tiny shadow of doubt flashed across his eyes. Something in the way she moved, something in the way she wouldn't even glance at him, ran a chill down his spine. Robyn took her oath, her voice shaking. She sat, shaking hands in her lap, looking down at the highly polished wood of the witness stand. The lawyer leaned forward softly. Mrs. Brown, do you want to inform the court about what you know regarding the charges against your husband? Robyn remained silent for a very long time. Her lips quivered, her breathing ragged. She wiped at her eyes with a tissue, filling the courtroom with her silence like a dense fog. Kody's head shot forward, his words a whisper but so audible that many heard. It's okay, Robyn. Tell them the truth. At last, Robyn raised her head. Her tear-swollen eyes looked at Kody, but they contained something else now. Something harder, something that knotted Kody's stomach. Kody, she said, trying to speak but her voice cracking. I've worked for so many years to shield you, to protect you, to have faith in you, but I cannot lie anymore. There was a simultaneous gasp in the courtroom. Kody's face went blank. The smug smile he had begun to affect faltered in an instant. Robyn, what do you mean? He spoke quietly. She fished a small black recorder from her bag and retrieved it with shaky fingers. The room contracted around it. All eyes clamped on that machine as she placed it carefully on the table before her. This, she spoke in a hushed tone, is the truth you didn't want anyone to know. The lawyer nodded. Play the tape, Mrs. Brown. Robyn's shaky finger pressed play. Static at first, then Kody's voice took over the courtroom. They'll never find out. I dictated all. Money, choices, commitment. If they try to escape, they'll live to regret it. Gasps from the crowd. Pens of reporters scribbled wildly. Jurors gave each other wide-eyed stares. Shasteen's face paled, her mouth parting with shock. Janelle's hands clamped onto the bench until her knuckles were white. Meri covered her mouth with shaking fingers. And Kody's eyes spread wide with horror. That's not me, he bellowed, leaping to his feet. That's faked. It's been edited. The judge's gavel came down. Mr. Brown, sit down. But it was too late. The words hung in the air like venom. Robyn cried openly now, but her voice became firmer. I taped that phone call months ago. I didn't want to accept it. I kept thinking it was just frustration, that you didn't mean anything you said. But you meant it, Kody, and I did know deep down. She whirled away from him, her face marked with betrayal. You weren't leading a family. You were controlling us. You weren't keeping us safe. You were trapping us. Kody's face twisted in anger. Robyn, stop this. You know me. You know I'd never. Her words sliced through him like a knife. I thought I knew you, but the man I thought I knew wouldn't say those things. The man I thought I knew wouldn't endanger the very people who cared about him. The jury shifted forward. Electricity charged in the atmosphere. The lawyer asked, Mrs. Brown, why did you wait until now to make this recording come public? Robyn brushed away her tears, her voice shaking but resolute. Because I was scared. Scared of what he would do. Scared of what the truth would cost. But after everything Christine, Janelle and Meri said today, I could no longer keep quiet. They were all right. Kody thudded his fists against the table, his voice shaking with urgency. You betrayed me, Robyn. After everything, you of all people. Robyn winced but stood firm. No, Kody, you betrayed yourself. You betrayed us all. The room was charged with electricity. Jurors murmured eagerly. Fingers clicked across keyboards. Even the onlookers sat stunned, wide eyes unable to process what they'd just heard. For so long, Robyn had been his armor, his strongest protector. But now, in this court, she had turned into his executioner. Kody leaned back in his chair, his own face pale. For the first time in his life, the man who believed he was invincible looked completely shattered. The judge cleared his throat, his voice booming over the chaos. This court will review the recording as evidence. Until then, all testimony remains under consideration. But let it be known, his eyes bore into Kody. The words we just heard carry weight. Heavy weight. Silence followed. Heavy, oppressive. Robyn lowered her head, sobbing quietly into her tissue. Christine stared at her in shock. torn between anger and a strange, reluctant sympathy. Janelle's face was unreadable, a mixture of vindication and sorrow. Meri's lips tightened, her eyes fixed on Kody like a predator watching prey. And Kody remained still. His hands shook, his jaw was tight, his mind was reeling. He scanned the courtroom, begging someone to stand with him, to support him. But no one stood, not a single one. The man who had been once loyal to 4 wives, to dozens of children, to a television audience of millions, sat by himself, surrounded by the ghost of his own condemning words. The tension in the room was stifling. Everyone sensed something greater was afoot, and everyone sensed this trial had just passed the point of no return. The courtroom air was heavy, electric, and nearly claustrophobic. Following Robyn's tape, nobody even moved a muscle. The hush was so razor-sharp it stung. All that could be heard was the quiet whine of the fluorescent lights overhead, humming softly like irate bees. Kody slumped back in his chair, white and trembling, the sounds on the tape still ringing in his own head. His mouth opened silently, like he was mouthing to himself, pleading with the universe to wipe out what had occurred. But the world didn't wipe out. The world observed, and the world judged. Judge Harris pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, his gaze sweeping the room. This trial has produced extremely troubling testimony. But the evidence doesn't stop here. Mrs. Janelle Brown, do you have additional materials to introduce? A murmur spread through the benches. Christine and Meri both shifted to look at Janelle, their faces tense, anticipator. Robyn brushed at her eyes, but even she raised her head a little, feeling that something bigger, something ultimate was going to happen. Janelle stood up deliberately from her place, holding a big manila envelope. Her face was white, her lips shaking, but her eyes blazed with determination. Yes, Your Honor, she answered, her voice firm, even though her hands were shaking. I do. The bailiff stepped forward and removed the envelope from her hand, presenting it to the judge. The room waited with bated breath. All eyes were on that envelope, as if it held the very essence of Kody Brown's destiny. Judge Harris examined the seal closely. It was dated, official, and stamped with the seals of financial institutions. He slowly opened it. The tearing sound reverberated in the quietness, just as loud as a gunshot. He drew out some papers and started reading. His eyebrows creased, his lips folded into a frown. The more he read, the darker his face became. Then he glanced upwards, his tone low but weighty. These records are substantial. They verify a series of secret funds, property transactions, and business activities conducted in Mr. Brown's name. Money was diverted without the family being informed. Assets were concealed. But there is something else. The courtroom leaned forward, hearts racing in anticipation. The judge unfolded one creased page. This is a handwritten letter. It seems to be written by Mr. Brown himself. Kody's face turned white as a sheet. He surged forward. No, that's personal. You can't. The gavel came crashing down with a crack that shook the walls. Sit down, Mr. Brown, or I will have you removed. Kody froze, his chest heaving, his fists balled. He slumped back into his seat, his eyes racing wildly between the judge and the letter in his hands. Judge Harris cleared his throat and started to read aloud. Once this is over, I'll leave them all behind. None of them matter. Not Meri, not Janelle, not Christine, not even Robyn. I'll build a new life without them. I'll take everything and start over. They'll never see it coming. The words hit the courtroom like a bomb. Gasps filled the air. Reporters' pens flew over paper. Cameras snapped wildly. Onlookers covered their mouths in shock. The jurors looked at each other in shock, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Christine's hands went to her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. Not tears of sadness, but of vindication. He knew it, she said hoarsely. I knew he was going to leave us all behind. Janelle shut her eyes, a lone tear running down her face a compound of relief and heartbreak. She had dreaded the truth for so long. Now it was been expressed for everyone to hear. Meri's face twisted with rage, her body trembling. For years she had clung to the hope that she mattered to him in some small way. But hearing her name, dismissed so coldly in his own handwriting, shattered that last fragile thread. And Robyn's weeping filled the courtroom. She doubled over, grasping her chest as if the words themselves had pierced her like a blade. Her devotion, her sacrifices, her years of protecting him, all of it thrown away, on nothing more than pawns in Kody's egotistical game. "You lied to me," she wailed. Her voice cracked, cutting through the mayhem. "You said I was the one. You said you loved me. And the entire time, you were going to discard me as well?" Kody's fingers clutched the table tightly enough that it seemed his knuckles would break through skin. "That letter doesn't mean anything," he cried frantically. "It was a draft. Words I never meant. Robyn, you have to believe me." But Robyn shook her head wildly, her face wet with tears. "No, Kody, for the first time I see the truth. You never loved me. You never loved any of us. You loved only yourself." The courtroom erupted now. Spectators shouted, reporters rushed around, jurors muttered furiously to each other. The bailiff shouted for order, but the din grew, uncontainable. Christine stood up, her voice slicing through the tempest like a knife. "You constructed this house of deceit, Kody, and now it is collapsing around you." Janelle was right behind her, holding up the rest of the documents. "The proof is evident. The accounts, the transfers, the letter, it's all there. You can't hide from this any longer." Meri spoke softly, but filled with venom. "You ruined this family. You ruined us all. And now, you will pay." The judge banged his gavel repeatedly, until there was finally silence, though the atmosphere still swirled with anger and shock. He looked directly at Kody, his voice firm and unyielding. "Mr. Brown, the evidence presented today paints a damning picture, not only of financial misconduct, but of deliberate betrayal and calculated abandonment of your family. This court will not take these revelations lightly." Kody's face twisted in fury. "This is a setup. They're all against me. They've twisted everything. I'm the victim here. They've twisted everything. I'm the victim here." But his voice was thin, desperate, almost pathetic. The jurors glared back at him, their faces cold and unforgiving. Kody Brown, the man who once held wives, children, and cameras in his power, looked powerless for the first time. The surprise had hit. His final defenses had broken, and everyone in that courtroom knew the truth. He had betrayed them all. The courtroom was filled in silent shock. The bombshell letter had exploded like dynamite, burning all that was left of trust to ashes. Kody Brown's empire, his wives, his family, his fame, was now reduced to smoldering ruins before the entire world. Judge Harris pushed his glasses up, his eyes squarely on Kody. "This court has heard evidence, reviewed testimony, and considered the conduct of Mr. Brown. The ruling will not be an easy one." The jurors fidgeted in their seats, some taking notes, others glowering at Kody with disgust and pity. The audience leaned forward, held breaths in their throats. The whole country watched. Kody clasped the rim of the defendant's table with shaking hands. He was dripping wet, perspiration staining his shirt against his back. His jaw ground hard with furious silence, as if grinding words he could not speak out loud. For the first time in his life, he felt no control. None over his wives. None over his family. None even over his own future. Meri's eyes burned into him, filled with years of suppressed anger. Christine sat upright, her arms folded tightly across her chest, unflinching. Janelle clutched the stack of papers in her lap, her hands steady despite the storm raging inside her. Robyn wiped at her tear-streaked face, but she did not look at Kody again. Judge Harris banged the gavel once. "The jury will now deliberate." The bailiff led the jurors to their room. The door slammed shut behind them, with a dull thud, leaving the courtroom stuck in a suffocating, tense limbo. For the course of 1 hour, the room was locked. Some nervously whispered, others gazed at the ground. The ticking of the large clock on the wall became agonizing, each second drawn out into perpetuity. Kody glared at his lawyer, his voice a bitter whisper. "This isn't finished. They're trying to make me out a monster. They pay for this." But his lawyer just shook his head, his expression somber. "Kody, the case against you is too strong. I don't think there's anything I can do anymore." When the jury did return, The sound of every heartbeat in the courtroom halted. The foreman, a burly man with unfaltering eyes, passed a creased sheet of paper to the bailiff, who took it to the judge. Judge Harris slowly uncreased it, his eyes reading the verdict. He waited, the silence drawing out until the pressure of it bore down on the entire congregation. At last he spoke. On the accusations of financial impropriety, breach of fiduciary duty, and willful withholding of assets, he glanced up, his voice firm grave. This court finds the defendant, Kody Brown, guilty. Gasps ripped through the room. Reporters fumbled, typing madly, cameras popping. The jurors remained expressionless, their verdict handed down with conviction. Meri let out a harsh breath, a bitter smile of satisfaction crossing her face. Christine's lips twisted into a hard smile of vindication. Janelle shut her eyes, mouthing a prayer of gratitude. Robyn wept softly, caught in a conflict between pain and relief. Kody leapt out of his chair, his face flushed, veins throbbing on his temples. This is a lie. A setup. You can't do this to me. I am the head of this family. I built everything. The bailiff moved in, hand resting close to his holster. Judge Harris slammed his gavel wildly. Order. Sit down, Mr. Brown. But Kody did not. His words grew to a demented yell, ringing out across the room. I'll never let them take it all from me. I'll never. Robyn rose from her chair, her words slicing through the pandemonium. Stop, Kody, stop it. Her frame trembled with anger and anguish. You did it, not us. You wrecked it all. Her voice shut him up more forcibly than the gavel. Kody actually shrank for the first time. His eyes wide, his chest pumping, he glanced wildly about. But all faces in that courtroom looked back at him with icy finality. The judge's voice boomed. Mr. Brown, you will be held in custody pending determination of sentencing. Bailiff, take him away. The bailiff moved in, grasping Kody's arm. The watchers leaned forward, anticipating the once proud patriarch to be taken away in handcuffs. But then, a deafening crack boomed through the room. Not the gavel, not footsteps. Something else. The ceiling lights flashed wildly, casting the courtroom into a near darkness. Gasp-filled screams filled the chamber as shadows writhed across the walls. Kody, Christine shouted out, her voice cutting with alarm. When the lights flickered back into place, Kody was gone from the defendant's table. His chair was empty, on its side. The bailiff turned in his tracks, his eyes raking the crowd. Where did he? Pandemonium. Photographers pushed forward, flashbulbs blinding the air. Spectators shouted and pointed. Wives leapt from their seats, fear writ on their faces. Judge Harris pounded his gavel once more, but his words were lost in the cacophony of the room. Order, order, but there was no order. Kody Brown was gone. Some swore they had seen him melt away through the side door amidst the chaos. Others muttered he was aided. Perhaps someone on the inside. Someone who did not want the entire truth out. Robyn hugged her chest, crying hysterically. Meri spoke under her breath. Coward. He ran because he's guilty. Christine faced the doors, her expression tough, resolute. He won't get far. Not this time. Janelle, still holding the incriminating papers, went pale. If he's desperate enough to flee, who knows what else he's capable of. The judge yelled above the commotion. This court is adjourned. The defendant is now a fugitive. But even as the judge's gavel fell, the truth settled like a storm cloud. The trial wasn't over. Not quite. Because Kody Brown, the man who had dominated his family like a king, had slipped away from justice's grasp. And out there, somewhere in the darkness, he was loose. But how long? The imagination's camera pulls out. The courthouse filled with police, reporters shouting into microphones. Christine, Janelle, and Meri standing in a group. And Robyn falling into her seat, sobbing. Off in the distance, out of sight, Kody Brown already mapping his next step. The drama was far from over, and the world would be watching.